Hey, what's up, YouTube? This is EV Comics, and I'm sick. I'm still sick. I'm not as bad as I was before, but I'm still coughing and sneezing and all sorts of stuff. Like it's been rough. This has not been a mild cold. This has probably been like, I don't know, COVID or the flu or something. I don't know. I probably just got the video demonetized by saying that, but uh, I wanted to do this review anyway because I think it's good timing, and I'll have more to say about the subject of the creator of the comics. I'll have a separate video talking about that. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and record it today after this one, but it'll be a separate video. This is another comic by Von Klaus, aka Rise Again Comics. Now, you know I love Terror in the Trenches. I love this comic a lot. I thought it was very well done. The dialogue was well written. The pacing was good. The artwork was phenomenal. Everything about it I really enjoyed. And I can say all the same things for Monster MD, though with slightly different circumstances. And I'll explain that as I go through. I'm going to try and not do huge spoilers. I'm going to try and keep it towards kind of like a little mild spoiling. So I'm not going to spoil anything about the end in specifics. Just kind of go through some of the character arcs and why I think they're well written and stuff like that. And some also just some really good writing points, some really good moments that stuck out to me, as well as some potential that may have been missed. But that's a nitpick, if anything. I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so let's go ahead and start talking about this. This series, I believe, takes place in the same universe because the main character is Dr. Wyatt Black. Now, that immediately raised alarm bells because this guy here in Terror in the Trenches is called the Black Terror. And they don't look all that dissimilar. I mean, they're not exactly the same looking guy. This guy's got kind of brown, dirty blonde hair. Black Terror has black hair. But it makes me wonder if it's possible that they could be related in some way. I don't think it's out of the question. I think it would be really cool if this was like the son of Black Terror or a brother or something, right? I'm not entirely sure what the time period is this is set in. It doesn't quite seem modern. It doesn't quite seem like today, like the 2000s and beyond. Like it seems like it might be in the 90s or something. And the choice of a song in here, which I believe is, let me pull that up real quick. What was it again? It was Rio Speedwagon, Can't Fight This Feeling. And now, as soon as this song lyrics were popped up on the radio, I went ahead and looked this up, and started playing that in the background while I was reading this to set the mood. And I played it a few times, and then eventually quit, and resumed to my reading in silence. But I thought that was a pretty good song. It accurately describes the feelings of the main character, Wyatt Black. Excuse me, first coughing break of many, I'm sure. I thought it matched the setting, the story setting, and everything. Like I thought it was a good match. And if the time of that song, I think that song came out in the '80s, meaning this story could take place in the '80s. I'm not entirely sure. It's not all that important, really. It's just something that I'm trying to figure out timeline wise because I believe Trenches takes place in the '60s. I want to say '50s or '60s, perhaps. It's after World War II, and I think it actually is the '60s. So it's possible that this guy Wyatt could be the son of Black Terror. I'm not quite sure, or descended in some other family member. Um, that being said, I didn't really see any big indicators that this is directly connected. I'm not seeing anything like that from here, so it's possible. It's possible that they're in the same universe, but it's also possible that they could not be. The art style is kind of similar. There's some similarities between the two. Artwork is phenomenal, as you can see. I'm just going to show these two pages. This time I got the digital version, just because it's cheaper. And hey, Christmas gifts ain't cheap. Let me tell you right now. So I also just had a dryer die on me, and I had to get some new tires for my car. So yeah, it ain't cheap. I'm sorry, but I can't afford both the comics in full print. Excuse me. But anyway, I went ahead and just got the digital comics for this and the other one. I can't remember the name of it. I'm sorry. My brain is not fully functioning, but I'll get to that one next. But anyway, Monster MD, Wyatt Black, he's a monster doctor who's getting burned out after 4 years of doing this, right? It's starting to get to him. And usually every time he helps someone, it ends up him getting hurt by the patients he's trying to help. He feels underappreciated, unsatisfied, and unfairly kicked out of being a real doctor by his professor at a morgue, right? And this essentially kind of kickstarts his career as a monster doctor. And there's a parallel here that I see that could potentially relate to comic artists and writers who have been kicked out of the mainstream for their beliefs or whatever, for their political beliefs. You know, the late 2010s, mid to late 2010s is kind of when the whole Comicsgate thing got started, where a lot of people who were right wing in the comic space defected or were kicked out rather, and shunned by the mainstream comics and by the larger, I guess, online community. They were harassed both online and in real life, and it eventually led to this group that was built that was basically just saying, hey, we're going to do our own thing. We don't need Marvel and DC to function. We can just do our own stuff. And there have been some great comics and stories that have come from this, including Rise Again comics. But unfortunately, I think that ship might be starting to sink. And by other video, we'll talk about that. I'm not going to go into it here. But the idea that I picked up with that was there was a parallel here to how Wyatt got kicked out of medical school due to circumstances sort of out of his control, sort of in his control. Kind of reminded me a little bit potentially of a parallel to the artists and writers of the scene, right? As the series goes on, Wyatt's constantly getting bit and clawed at by creatures he's helping, but his left arm he always holds up his left arm to take the hit. This is because his left arm is an undead arm. Now, this was given to him by a revenant that he saved, and in her dying moments, in her final moments, her good act was helping him get on his path of being a monster MD, and she gave her arm to him. Now, excuse me, I'm so sorry. That basically, you see like a montage in the middle of the comic that kind of shows you all his different patients and all of them basically attacking him and everything. And I saw this and just assumed that, oh, he's immune to all the monster infections because it's an undead arm. It's not his real arm that's getting attacked. But I assumed wrong. And there's one or more of these infections that do return in the final climactic moment of this comic. And, you know, I'm not going to spoil exactly what happens. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try and stay away from major spoilers. But to talk about the climactic battle even a little bit, I have to mention the Ghoul, the monster of monsters, if you will, which is this scary looking guy over here. Now, this dude, excellent design. Immediately, he's a scary dude. He makes me think of this design of Scarecrow from Batman the Animated Series, the third season that they made. It makes me think of this, not just a robe around the neck, but the cloak, sort of like the dark figure sort of thing, the long hair, the smile, you know, the eyes and everything. Like he's very menacing. He's very menacing in his appearance, and I think that's done very, very well. I really like this design. It immediately tells you everything about this character that you need to know without him even saying a word. I was reading him as like Clancy Brown in like the not the Mr. Krabs voice, but more like the Savage Opress from the Clone Wars series. Kind of the rougher, growlier voice like this. I can't do it. I can't do it right now, man. It sucks. I'm tired of being sick. Ah! But anyway, good design here, and there was a twist with this character that I really wasn't expecting. He's more involved with the plot than I thought he would be. I thought he was just a bad guy with a backstory that isn't really important to this first volume. But as it turned out, as I was reading this, this story is kind of its own self-contained story. It really doesn't need a sequel or anything. It is its own story. Now, of course, I would like to have more because I like the characters and everything that's been set up about this. But it is a very completed story, unlike Trenches, which kind of leads off in a cliffhanger in the middle of battle. This is a very complete story, including for the character arcs that everyone goes on. It's a very complete story through and through. And I wasn't expecting that, but I think it was done pretty well. However, this is where I talked about some potential that might have been missed comes into play, because the character arcs are well written for all the characters involved. I think they're all very interesting and well done, if just a tad quick. And I mean just a tad. Like, it's a very minor thing, but it does feel like it just sort of wraps up a little quickly. And I think this could have potentially been done a little better if it was a series. Not to say that it's bad as it is, but I think, like, I'm kind of like picturing a sort of episodic type of feel, like Courage the Cowardly Dog or The Grim Adventures of Billy Mandy, where like every episode they're focusing on this new type of monster that they gotta fix and stuff like that. It kind of like, I could see a potential for that for this series. And that overall I think could have potentially built up the Ghoul a little bit better, right? It could have built up this guy, given him a little more time to build up to the plot twist, as well as the gradual wearing down of Dr. Black as the series goes, as opposed to having him start off feeling this way and then showing a montage of how he got to this point midway through the comic. Again, I'm not saying it's done bad at all, but I'm saying that there was a potential to actually drag it out a little bit longer into like a episodic sort of feel, with shorter comics potentially leading up to a longer story overall, but shorter individual comics. I think there was potential to do that. Not to say that would have been the better move. I just see that and I'm like, there could have been a little more fleshing out to the characters potentially, but I still think it's great nonetheless. And speaking of other characters, Heidi, good pun on the name, by the way. Invisible Woman, not like the Marvel character, but like a woman who is invisible like all the time. And her name is Hyde E. Yeah, it's pretty funny. What I think is really good about how this comic shows her ability off, is that whenever she takes a hit from a cigarette, her lungs fill up with smoke, and you can see that, but you can't see anything else. That's such a cool idea, which also, yes, implies that she's naked in like most of the scenes that she's in, to be honest. But similar to how the Invisible Girl is handled in My Hero Academia, except this one is not underaged. Anyway, her character is very, very well done. I like her design as well, and the scrubs. I mean, it's just basically a hospital scrub with like a face cloth to show that her face is there. Of course, there's nothing behind the mask or the goggles or anything. Like it's she's entirely see through. But where she's wearing clothes, it basically just, I mean, it's just a simple design. It's a nurse design essentially. But it's done with that little added extra flair of her being invisible, and I think it's pretty good. Now, you do later on get to see how she would look if she wasn't invisible, and all I had to say to that is, that's it. That's basically all I had to say about it, right? The very good design. I like her design. I like all the character designs. Like I said, all of them really kind of speak to who the characters are, including Dr. Black. He's got this kind of the scruffle going on, kind of like how I do. He looks tired, he looks worn out and burned out of doing this, and all the characters' designs tell you who they are without much without much need. Even the guy he's operating on at the beginning, the guy who turns into a werewolf, which, by the way, he calls the infection furpies, which is there's a lot of lines like that, and that's something I'll mention now. The dialogue almost kind of makes me think of some of the stuff I heard in the Wednesday Addams series on Netflix. There's all kinds of puns and stuff like that, where it's basically just taking monster terminology and stuff like that and mixing it with like modern day like language and stuff like that. And it's done in like in a funny kind of throwaway line thing, but there's a lot of that if you pay attention to it. There is a lot of little things like that, which I think is pretty funny overall. Her backstory as well, going back to Heidi, her backstory that comes as like a bonus story at the end of it. I went ahead and read that too. Totally optional, but I think her story is pretty interesting. Not as interesting as the main story. It has to do with her being a nun, and the priest is secretly a bad guy. Not entirely the most creative plot line that's been done like a million times before at this point. There there is like sort of there is still some good writing in there. There's some dialogue callbacks, not just in the main story, but in Heidi's backstory. There's dialogue callbacks and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of things just overall in Von Stur's writings that is just on paper just objectively really good. There's setup and payoff. There's dialogue callbacks. There's stuff like that, and I want to try and do stuff like this. Like I want to try and do more stuff like this in my stuff because it's so satisfying whenever you're reading this and you're like, that was said earlier on. I get it. And even a line that some characters that you wouldn't even think is important, that some characters are saying, it might turn out that it's a lot more important than you think. And when you think back on it, you're like, oh, that makes sense why that guy was talking to him this way and stuff like that. Like saying the things he said. It's very interesting. It's very rewarding whenever you notice that. And objectively, the writing of these comics, both Terror in the Trenches and Monster MD, are very good. Very, very, very good. And very rewarding. But ultimately, what goes on with Heidi as a character, she truly believes in Wyatt more than he does at this point. She is basically the only reason he's hung on for this long. There's already kind of some romantic tension between them. I mean, she's laying her head in his lap whenever he's telling her about how he even got started on this path. Sorry, I just hit the mic. There's already some romantic tension in there, which I think is fun to kind of already have that be in the story instead of like, ooh, will they, won't they? It's like, oh yeah, of course they are going to, but whether we see that in this comic or not is up in the air while you're reading it. And it's I think it's better than just having the characters blush at each other nonstop. You know, like I can do this and be funny about it, but when it comes to actually writing, that kind of gets annoying to me after a while. That was one of my biggest critiques about the Owl House, was that the characters go from hating each other to flirting with each other and constantly, not even flirting really, but just blushing at each other's presence all the time. And I felt like that was really forced and odd, and just annoying. Again, that's a kid's cartoon. It's different, I guess, writing standards, I suppose, but it just came out to me as a little forced. And this is not, you don't get that here. You don't get that here at all. Like it's already kind of implied that they're into each other. More so than just romantic too. I mean, like it's they truly have, over the 4 years of doing this together, they truly have like developed a bond that makes them inseparable. And Wyatt thinks he can just leave, but in reality, there's no way he could never leave. Not with her still trying to do this by herself. He would never be able to do that. And so the final climactic moment is essentially involving all three of them in this final battle between them and Wyatt, Heidi, and the ghoul. The ghoul. I almost said his name, and I'm not gonna say his name. I guess that basically, like, everything's shown in the first half. I already mentioned is like it's paid off. The setup is really good. The dialogue is brought back and referenced to a previous dialogue that's the same way, and it feels very much like Terror in the Trenches as far as the writing quality of it. It's great. It's genuinely great. I will say this comic is kind of gross. It's got a lot of blood and gore and galore, and even like one character which is like very obviously sexual in nature, but nothing like straight up nudity or whatever. Like not in the typical sense anyway. Because the Invisible Woman is always in visible, and sometimes she's not wearing clothes, but you can't see anything, so it's not technically nudity. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, it's just a really enjoyable comic. It's a story set up all on its own. Like, it's a well told story with the potential for more in the future, which I believe there's more coming in the future. I believe I've already seen that. But yeah, check out Rise Again Comics. I mean, they got some stuff digital now, so if it's $12 instead of 24, I believe, for the physical comic. Um, so if money's tight right now, $12, not that bad. In a moment like this where I'm spending more money on gifts and replacing things, it's nice to have the digital option. So I appreciate that. I didn't have to pay shipping either, which also helps. But yeah, I mean, like, Vonster knows what he's doing with writing. Like, Von Klaus knows what he's doing with these comics, and the artists are really just firing on all cylinders. It's really good stuff. It's just very consistently good throughout all the pages of this comic, and with Terror in the Trenches. So I hope he's able to keep doing what he's doing. I hope nothing changes effectively. I hope he's able to still create comics and sell them just as well, if not better now. Like, don't let anyone that are still hanging around in Comicsgate that are bitter at him just because EVS is kind of steering them to be bitter towards him. Don't let them tell you that Von Klaus is a bad writer, because that is definitely not true. He is definitely a good writer when it comes to comics, and better than some of the professionals. I would say his stuff so far has beaten out Chuck Dixon with Alpha Core, at least. I'm not gonna say anything about the other comics. I'm just talking about Alpha Core, recent stuff, Alpha Core and Horseman. I feel like I've enjoyed these comics way more than a seasoned veteran at comic book writing, which is saying a lot. So, but yeah, I'm gonna stop inflating Von Klaus's head and end the video here. So I don't want his head to pop. So I'm gonna stop right there and try and deflate him a little bit. So thanks so much for watching. Thanks for sticking with me, even though I've been sick and I'm not feeling good. Hopefully I'll be better by tomorrow. I think I'm on the up end of it now. So I'm doing a lot of art for Volume 6. So stay tuned to that. And also stay tuned for the video talking about the whole Von Klaus situation and my honest thoughts on Comicsgate as a movement at this point. But yeah, until next time, thanks so much for watching. Read Little Miss Steele. Until next time, peace out.